G'day people, I'm Sharon, welcome to my channel. Today I'm putting Grace's quilt together. A few things that I had to do first. There was about 2.5 to 3 meters of fabric purchased to make the tape to go between the squares. I needed 22 strips of tape, 1 inch wide, that I ran through my tape maker. That gave me as many pieces of 1/2 inch wide tape as I needed. The sewing I'm doing on my Memory Craft 15,000, and I'm using the built-in walking foot on it. That is the ditch quilting foot, and the reason I'm using that is because it has a flange down the center and I can move the needle position to either side of that and use that to get my top stitching nice and even on the tape. So I'm now going to start putting the tape that I've made onto the back of the quilt. I have adjusted the needle so that it is 2 millimeters to the left of the flange on this foot. And what I'm doing is putting this tape fairly over the center of the join that I made before. So I'm doing a straight stitch. I have increased the stitch length to 2.8 millimeters. Now, I'm actually not watching at all what the needle is doing. The needle is able to be, it's doing a straight stitch, and I have adjusted it to be 2 millimeters to the left of that flange. As long as I'm keeping the tape that I made actually on the flange, the needle will do the right thing. I'm putting this on the back first. It is possible I could have put the joins, I could have covered them. So had I wanted to, I could have, excuse me, I just bumped the camera. I could have actually put those pieces up to the middle as I made each strip. But by doing this bit first, I will be putting a whole piece of tape across there, and it will look straight. It won't have any funny dog legs in it. Now I have a choice. I could, at this stage, because I've only got 2 columns that I've stitched together, I could actually turn the whole column around and stitch it exactly the same way again. But I really don't want to do that. I'm going to take it back to where I started. Because as I get more and more pieces on that side, I'm not going to be able to turn it. So I'm going to show you now how I adjust the needle position so I can do the same thing but on the other side. Now here are the settings as I had them before. You'll notice this one, which in most cases would be the width key if you were doing a zigzag. This one is the length, it's how far the stitches are moving along at each point. So I've got that set to 2.8 mil. This one here, I'm going to put it back to defaults. Let's put everything back to defaults. And you will have noticed that that moved across. So that's showing you the default setting for a straight stitch. Has it in the middle of the hole, and I shifted this across till it got down to 2.5, and that is what moved my line of stitching across to the left. It's still doing a straight stitch, but it's doing it in a different position. This one I moved to 2.8 mils, and that's because that's the size that I like to use for stitching. Now though, I'm going to be stitching on the other side of my tape. I actually need to be 2 millimeters that side. So not over here, I need to move 2 millimeters to the right of center. So if we go back to the default setting, which is 4.5, I need to go up now to 6.5. 6. You can see I'm now on the other side. Once again, I need to take my stitch length up to 2.8. I'm now ready to sew the other side of the tape. So now the flange is on the left side of that tape, but everything else I'm doing the same. This is quite heavy, so it's pulling at the beginning on the front of the, so I'm giving it a hand along. I do apologise if I bump the camera. So what I'm trying to help it with at the moment is the weight of what it's trying to move. I don't want to pull it, but I don't want that weight to be dragging on the front either. I'm now getting about a reasonable length along. It's not dragging so much on the front. So my aim is to guide that flange along the left side of my tape. That is the effect I've got from running the machine with adjusting the needle drop position on either side of the tape. Now the next thing I need to do is the same thing, but on the front of the quilt. When I turned over to do the front of the quilt and put that tape down on the front, I wanted the stitching to be a little bit wider than it was on the back, so a little bit closer to the edge of the tape. So instead of it being 2 mils to the left or right of the flange, I made it 1 millimeter to the left or right of the flange. I need to make sure that I do cover the whole of that join. go back to the beginning and do the other side of the tape. I want to keep doing it in the same direction because I know that as I add further columns of blocks to this, if I'm turning it, I won't be able to turn it later because I'll end up with too much quilt in the harp space of the machine. So I want to do it where I keep adding an extra column on this side and do the back and the front of the bindings at that time, and then add an extra column and do the back and the front of the linings. On the front, it looks like that, and on the back, like that. There are actually 2 rows of stitches on each side. From the front, you can only see 1 row on each side. Now I'm going to get on and do the rest of the quilt. I've gone zigzag now. I just checked that I had the right square at the top. It's back together. You didn't get to see the beginning of this because my camera ran out of space. When I did it on the first, joining the first 2 columns, all I'm trying to do, get these cross bits to line up. The quilt is getting heavier and heavier as I add more rows to it, which means the machine is going to need help. But when I give it help, I don't pull it through, I just support things so that it's not dragging, so the quilt is not dragging on the machine. The machine is managing to move the quilt. Strictly speaking, it doesn't want to have the top feed dogs working while it's on a zigzag, but it works this way. A little bit of pushing and pulling in order to get these to match up, because I want them to be pretty close to match so that when I come to put the thread across or the binding across, it can go straight across. So there might be a little bit of encouragement happening. 3 rows joined, or 3 columns joined, and I need to flip it over in order to put tape on the back. Now I have no choice but to start at this end, because if I start at the other end, I'm going to have 2 blocks under here, which will be a pain in the neck. So where I've got it at the moment, I have to only have 1 block in the half space of my machine. So at this time, all of the squares have been joined into columns, and the columns have been joined to make the entire quilt. So there are all 42 blocks are now on the quilt. But you can see that the lines here have not yet been covered. And that is the next part I will do. The back at the moment, like the front, has got the columns covered, but these joins of the rows need to be covered. So I will do all of the joins on the back of the quilt will now be covered, and then I will do all of the joints on the front. And by doing it that way, I don't have to keep rearranging the quilt. I just undo it a bit from being rolled up. When I start doing these, I will do them. There are 5 joins that I need to cover. I will start with the one in the middle, which is that one there. And I will have everything on this side rolled up, and I will do that one, and then I will undo and do that one, and undo and do that one, and then I will turn the entire machine around in my the entire quilt around in my machine and do the remaining 2 rows in the other direction. And that will give me the least number of times that I have to fiddle around rolling and unrolling. So I'll do it first on the back and then on the front. I hope you can see that at this point, even with a lot of the joins still to be covered, I'd put a lot of time into joining the strips, covering the strips, making the coverings that went on the strips. This is not something you do in a day. It took quite a lot of hours to get to this point. So in the next episode, you should see the finished quilt. See you next time.